Welcome to this latest edition of WildlightTV. This is going to be the follow-up video to the session we did in the forest with the Nikon 10.5mm fisheye the other day. I've pulled together some photos that I've done with the Nikon, one from the other day, some from previously, then a few other fisheye photos to give an indication of what it is that I like to do with this lens. So I've just put them all into a quick collection in Lightroom and we can have a look at them.
Shall we begin? Let's begin now.
So this was a picture we did the other day in the forest when we were shooting that piece. There was just a 5-finger growing up under the canopy, and by getting close underneath it we could get the pattern of its leaves with the reaching tree ferns in the background. These pictures you may recognise if you saw our Christmas episode that we were talking about doing a review of the fisheye. This was taken at Hammerona Springs, and you can see the curvature of the sides, but it's not that disturbing because it works as quite a nice frame for the image, and provided we keep the level horizon line of the river in the centre of the frame, we don't get any curve distortion, so it can give quite a nice feel to a picture and get a wide view. This next one was taken in almost the same place as the previous one, looking up into the redwood forest. The feeling I get when walking through a path like this is sort of these trees reaching way up above me, and no other wide-angle lens really does a good job of capturing that. And this really shows how the trunks reach way up to their little canopies at the top. And to my eye the curvature doesn't disturb me much at all, it just really captures that feeling of being there. This is another picture taken in the forest while walking the dog, and this tree was a nice subject with its fine branches, these curving vines going up, the tree ferns around it, and the fisheye lens really catches that environment very nicely. I think a wide angle lens, a wide angle other than fisheye, would just take a piece out of it and wouldn't really capture that tree completely, and definitely not the feeling of it being in the forest. There's another picture with the Nikon 10.5 fisheye, looking up at these epiphytes growing off a tree fern. By stopping way down to f22 we could get a nice starburst and a little bit of flare in the image here, and they all work nicely as a compositional element with that line moving through it, and the other branches coming in and trunks as framing elements almost. So it's quite a unique view and gives a nice feeling of how it is to be there. This is also with the Nikon fisheye. It just really accentuates the huge depth of field that we can get. I was having to make sure that my toes weren't showing up in the bottom of the frame, crouching down. And also being a wide angle lens, you can hand hold it at relatively low speeds. This was 1/10 of a second, so we were getting some nice blurring of the waterfall and movement in the water down here. There's another picture of the same waterfall, and this is quite interesting because the waterfall actually comes in at 90 degrees to the direction that the river flows. And in this image it almost looks like the waterfall's flowing towards us and the river's flowing almost away in the same direction. But it lets us capture images that are quite unique, and the distortion isn't overly concerning. As I say, if we keep the horizon line near the centre we don't get that curve, and that's what really gives it away if it is a fisheye lens that we're using. So it's just being a matter of being aware of the composition, and it can be useful to show images that you can't get in any other way. These next set of images weren't taken with the Nikon 10.5 fisheye. These were taken with a Samyang 8mm fisheye and a Fuji X-T1, and that's the fisheye I've used up until now. As I said in the video, initially I've been impressed with the better quality of the Nikon and also the autofocus properties of it. But one of the reasons I got the Samyang fisheye was that I was heading down to the subantarctic islands and was very keen to get some photographs in the southern rata forest down there. This was a picture taken from the bottom of a sinkhole. I was sitting in a zodiac looking up at this hole in the earth with the sky above it. You can see down the bottom right is the Zodiac driver here, but I'm looking directly up at the sky, and this is the walls of the sinkhole with all the vegetation around it, and that's an image you couldn't get except with a fisheye lens. This is some of the rata forest that I was wanting to photograph. This is right on the edge of Enderby Island, where the wind really batters the forest and damages the trees and the exposed edge of it. We've got these lovely big mega herbs down at the bottom, and it lets you use these lines as a nice compositional element and really highlights the feeling of the forest with these denuded branches and trunks. That's another view of it. You can see this is a rata just in from the edge. It still has its foliage at the tips, but the fisheye really gives you the ability to use these curves nicely. This was on Auckland Islands beneath the rata forest. Again shows these branches and trunks reaching up for the sky, and they're each competing for their little patch of light, creating interesting patterns, and then the lines of the trunks and branches. This is really the picture that I went to take, or I took the camera to take. I was wanting to catch the rata forest with the ferns underneath it, and this photograph was quite successful. It was recognised as runner-up in the New Zealand Geographic Photographer of the Year Landscape Competition 2016. So I'm quite pleased with it. It really was something I'd almost pre-visualised before going, and I took the lens and camera specifically to try and get a picture like this. Again, you'll see the horizon's been placed in the middle of the frame to avoid any giveaway distortion, and the curvature in the corners is quite acceptable and actually works as a nice framing element. So that's the kind of image I'm looking for, and I find this lens is the only way to do it. This is another picture in a similar sense down at the Moeraki boulders on the South Island. It lets us capture this as a focal point, this boulder with a pool in it, with the horizon near the middle of the frame. Also we're avoiding distortion, and it lets us make the most of these really dramatic cloud patterns that almost look like they're erupting out of this rock. Alright, well hopefully that's given you an idea of what we can do with that fisheye lens, the reason I like it and the sort of things that I use it for. As I said at the initial video, it's got fairly limited applications, but the type of images you can make with it you can't really make with anything else. So provided you use it carefully and use it for the reasons, the correct reasons, I think it's a very useful lens to add to your camera bag. As I said in our initial thing, the Nikon I found much nicer to use than the Samyang. It's a autofocus lens, so focuses quickly, and the quality I found fantastic. So I'd really recommend giving it a go. It might be the sort of thing you might want to rent first to see if it fits in with your vision. And also, if you decide it's something you want to get, they're often available second hand for a very reasonable price compared to what you'd pay for a brand new one. So hopefully you've enjoyed that. Remember to subscribe to keep up with what we're doing, and we'll see you next time. Cheers. This is just a little bit of an intro. The next episode will be episode 10, which is a small milestone for us. It's going to be something a little bit different. It's actually not going to be an outdoor photography thing, it's more of an indoor thing. It's something I do every couple of years. It's going to take a little bit of time to bring together, but I think it may be something you find interesting and useful. And the other thing we'd like to do is thank our subscribers and followers. There's been some really interesting questions and feedback that we're going to be able to incorporate into future videos. So we really appreciate your involvement and look forward to seeing you next time. Cheers.